Do it for time, guys. Emily, Julian Morgan, Emily for Frame Lake. Let me try that again.
Julian Morgan, eh?
Oh, God. All right. Maybe the three of you can finish. My apologies. I'm doing a horrible job today.
Shauna Morgan, representative for Yellowknife North. Happy to see you here.
Hi, I'm Kate Reed. I'm the MLA for Great Slave here in Yellowknife. Good to see you.
Julian Morse, MLA Frame Lake. Thanks.
I'm terribly apologetic to the two of you. I don't know why the M's always mess me up. My apologies. Folks, as we're here for a public hearing, I'll stick to my process, I guess. We're here for a public hearing. I'll pass the mic on to you folks here in a moment. Normally how it works is because we're recorded and publicly in the context of being live, all conversations have to go through the mic, so speakers have to be identified. So members will ask questions, potentially and it has to go flow through, and then we'll identify you. Mics are operated by the very capable staff. That said, they will take carriage of those challenges. So shall we begin? And if you want to be more than one speaker, just sort of point to which one and we'll identify as appropriate. So I'm going to go with you in the middle, that you'll start. If you could introduce yourself officially for the record, and we'll just pass the mic amongst the three of you, and then we'll proceed with the presentation, and we'll figure it out. So we also have viewers, I believe we have participants online. Nope, not at this particular time, and when we do, we'll let them know. So please begin.
And thank you for this opportunity to speak with you all this morning. My name is Julia Jeppe, and I am co-chair of the NWT Climate Change Youth Council.
Thank you for having me as well. My name is Regan Junkins, and I'm currently serving as chair for the Northwest Territories Climate Change Youth Council.
This morning we are here to introduce ourselves and provide a brief overview of... Did you want to introduce yourself? Sorry, go ahead.
Corey, you have to.
Go ahead.
Okay. So we're here to introduce ourselves and provide a brief overview of who we are as the Climate Change Youth Council, what we've done to date, and some recommendations that we've recently provided.
There we go. Thank you.
So what is the NWT Climate Change Youth Council? We're a cohort of currently 8 youth between the ages of 18 to 30 from across the Northwest Territories who provide input and advice to the NWT Climate Change Council on all matters pertaining to climate change. We were established in March of 2023 as the NWT Climate Youth Advisory Group, but have since renamed to the NWT Climate Change Youth Council, or NWTCCYC. And we're administered by the GNWT Climate Change Unit.
So I'm just going to take a... Thank you. I'm going to take a quick moment to introduce our members. So we have me and Julia. We both represent the South Slave, and we're both from Hay River. And we have our 2 members from Yellowknife, James Thomas and Ellen Gillis. And we have 1 member from the North Slave right now, Tanisha Beaverhoe, 2 members from the Deschaux, Marianne Minoza and Lauren Cornet Lafferty, and then 1 member from the Beaufort Delta, Grace Ilisiak. And so we are currently missing a few members. We should have 2 from every region represented, but unfortunately, life circumstances, people leave councils. But we are recruiting new members this coming March. And then our purpose, so why the CCYC was created. We bring together the critical perspectives of youth from all of the Northwest Territories regions to engage other community members in an open and transparent dialogue on climate change, to understand key climate-related issues, challenges, and perspectives, to formulate youth priorities, and including amplifying the voices of youth to influence policy action by decision makers. And we are also trying to build the capacity, experience, and networks of engaged youths to be the next generation of NWT climate change leaders. So all of these things together combined create the purpose of why we were created. And I'd like to pass the mic to Julia for this slide.
So what have we done so far? Over the past 2 years, we've had several in-person gatherings. Our most recent was last week, where we connected in person with the Climate Change Council and attended and presented at the GNWT Climate Change Advisory Gathering. We've had several virtual meetings and have been involved in several outreach activities within our communities and regions, as well as presenting at local, territorial, regional, national, and international conferences and events. For example, I presented at the Adaptation Futures Conference in Montreal last fall, and recently Regan presented and attended at the Young One World Summit in Montreal. And several of our other members have also been involved in other projects through their own climate youth advocacy networks. So I'd like to pass the mic over to Regan.
Perfect. Please.
Sorry, just waiting for the slide. There we go. So currently what we're working on is searching for new funding opportunities, increasing our social media presence. Our social media tag is there, and currently it's me that's running the account, so we're working on posting a bit more often in order to reach other youth across the Northwest Territories. And then we'd also like to start kind of doing climate change education sessions in schools across the territory, but that's something that again requires funding. And then organizing climate change events and programs and projects in all of our regions in order to support the upcoming 2025 to 2029 action plan for the climate change framework for the GNWT. And then as well, we recently found out that our proposal to present at the Arctic Council's Arctic Youth Conference in Tromsø, Norway was accepted. So we're working on getting to Norway to attend the Arctic Council's Youth Conference, which is the first of its kind. It's the first time the Arctic Council will ever be hosting a youth conference, and we're very excited to be in attendance as a group. And I'd like to pass the mic over to Julia.
Thank you. So we submitted a review of the NWT Climate Change Strategic Framework and 2030 Energy Strategy a year ago. And in this review, we called on the GNWT on 3 points. The first was around lifting the renewable energy cap. In this, we recommended identifying, funding, and implementing policy and technical solutions to lift the 20% cap on renewable energy generation in NWT communities. This cap acts as an unnecessary barrier to reducing the NWT's reliance on fossil fuels and to support Indigenous energy sovereignty. Reforming our energy systems so that communities have more control on how they produce energy is not only an essential part of our emissions reduction, but also supporting Indigenous self-determination. The second recommendation we made was around increasing emission reduction ambitions. So we recommended setting a new emissions reduction target of 60% below 2005 levels by 2030 and net zero by 2045. This target should include industry, but the GNWT must take active and significant steps to reduce emissions in all other sectors so that reductions are not passively achieved by mine shutdowns. And we were excited to learn about the GNWT's recent commitment to develop a net zero emissions target by 2050, which was announced last week. The third recommendation we made was around legislating climate accountability for industry. Emissions from industry comprise about half of the NWT's overall emissions, so a single industrial project opening or closing can have a major effect on the territory's total carbon emissions. We called on the GNWT to establish and legislate standards for industry to ensure that new projects do not compromise our progress towards our overall targets. And new projects must demonstrate a meaningful commitment to limiting fossil fuel reliance. So those are a few of the highlights, but we're happy to share the full recommendations in our document with you. And I'd like to pass the mic over to Regan.
And just, yeah, that'd be great. Please share them. Ms. Rick?
Yeah, I've prepared a few physical copies if you'd like to grab one from me after the meeting to pass around. But anyways, now I'm going to talk about the pathway, so how we can get to our recommendations and the things that we recommended can be done in order to achieve these goals that we set. So the first one is to establish a youth climate corps. A youth climate corps is a guaranteed of well-paying jobs to all young people interested in helping the NWT adapt to climate change. And these jobs could include funding guardian programs, firefighting, retrofitting buildings, building clean energy infrastructure, fire smarting communities, and so many others. We identified a clear need for young people to have jobs that aren't necessarily extractive or causing more harm to the environment. And then expanding funding sources for home and organizational emissions reductions was our next pathway. Currently, there exists a gap in the current GHG retrofitting funding program where the project needs to be over $100,000 in order for it to receive any kind of funding. And that creates a gap in the way that not a lot of people are looking to have $100,000 projects to retrofit their home. So this would open up the pathway for people to get solar panels on their house or for new heating sources, and just keep it a little bit more individual. And also it could include on the land programming to support people that rely on diesel generators to potentially install some solar panels or some wind turbines on their land or on their property with funding from the GNWT. And then the next pathway we identified is a commitment to reducing GNWT emissions. Between 5,000 to 6,000 people, about a quarter of all working people in the Northwest Territories work for the GNWT and rely heavily on fossil fuel, such as, and just in general, things that affect our environment to do their jobs. Almost every single GNWT vehicle is powered by gas. And if you're going to talk the talk and say that we're going to be doing all of these things to improve our emission status, then we got to walk the walk. Commit to reviewing your reliance on gas-powered generators. Commit to reducing your own emissions. So yeah, you can't really expect other parties and private industry to change if you're not doing the change yourself. And then the next one is to improve public outreach and communications. And I feel like that one is a little bit more standard to kind of, instead of posting the occasional GNWT logo with text, it's not going to be enough to get people on board with a lot of these ideas. And programs, individuals don't necessarily understand the importance of climate action just based on what you guys are posting right now. So sharing the perspectives of elders who are seeing things on the land, sharing the perspectives of youth who are at the forefront of this battle, could be very important. And then the next pathway that we had was to improve carbon tax transparency. I feel like there's a lot of people that don't really understand what the carbon tax is or what it's for or what it does or where the money goes to. So improving that, I think, would put a better image on the carbon tax instead of trying to get rid of it. There's a lot of differing opinions on where the carbon tax stands, but I think that it would be helpful if people could really know what it is. And yeah. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Is that the conclusion of the presentation? Very good. Folks, we will now open the floor up for questions, looking for any questions from members. We did take your package, thank you very much. We'll forward it on to all members, and we do have a few copies, as you pointed out, in paper. So I'll start with Ms. Reed for questions, please, if you would.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for your presentation. It's really wonderful to see the Youth Council come to life and have all of this work done in such a short amount of time. You spoke about the establishment of a Youth Climate Corps, and from what you said in your presentation, it sounds very interesting to me. Obviously, youth are very interested in how they can impact and change the world to be more I don't know what the word I'm looking for is, but to have more impact on what we're doing as a territory, obviously, to work in adaptation, mitigation ways and that are real and tangible. And so this is a really interesting piece that you're bringing forward. Could you speak a little bit more to what that looks like and what you're hoping it might accomplish? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Reed. Who would like to take that? Okay, and I believe I'm going to say that is it Junkin? Junkai, please, if you would.
Okay, so thank you for the question. My vision for a Youth Climate Corps is kind of like a job posting and creating jobs that are directly linked to climate change, adaptation and mitigation. So kind of like I said, wildfire preparedness, so firefighters and people that create fire breaks and all of that kind of stuff, which is so lovely. What we're kind of asking for and looking for in that is just a dedication to the GNWT to create those kind of jobs and to have those kind of jobs present in their workforce. They already exist in some capacity in most communities, but kind of creating a more standardization of those jobs and making them available year-round rather than most of them being kind of casual. Or providing opportunities in every community for someone that cares about climate change and that wants to make a difference in the environment to be able to do that and make money doing that. I know that a lot of struggle that young people have in this field, first of all, is finding a job. I mean, even myself, I've been working in climate change since I was 17, and the only place that I could work in climate change policy is Yellowknife. And I would so greatly love to live in Hay River and be able to do that, but I can't. And so that's one aspect of it, is creating those kind of jobs in other communities and a variability of different kind of climate involved jobs in other communities that are steady and young people are able to get them.
Thank you for that. Ms. Reed, anything further, please?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for that. So what I'm hearing is sort of a component of already existing jobs in the GNWT, but possibly an expansion of those existing jobs and an interlocking way of how they all fit together, and maybe the conversations and discussions that could be happening amongst those folks who are in those positions. Is that correct? Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Reed. Ms. Junkin? Ms. Junkind, I believe. Yes, please.
Sorry? Oh, yeah, that's kind of exactly what we're talking about. It's just kind of like getting all of those jobs that are pretty much related and putting them all into the same category and making it very clear and defined that these are jobs for people to get involved in the environment.
Thank you. I know Mr. Morris and then Ms. Morgan thereafter and no one else. So Mr. Morris, if you would like to proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Really, I'm not sure if I even have questions, but I did want to speak, a real appreciation for your work. This is something that when I saw the advisory group come forward with their recommendations, I remember highlighting this during the election. I was very excited by the work you guys had done and the incredibly sort of practical and pragmatic recommendations that you were making to GNWT. I just think that you guys very, very quickly demonstrated the value of establishing the youth advisory group. So excellent work. If I can phrase it as one question, I would say, have you had any further engagement with ECC since you've submitted your comments on the strategic framework and 2030 energy strategy? And can you kind of describe that? Has there been sort of a positive reception of your recommendations? Any kind of further detail you can give us, I would appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Yes? I believe it's Ms. Gapé? No, I'll let you say it so I can learn it. Thank you.
Japai, thank you. And thank you for your question. So we met with Minister Kelly last week and had a conversation around these recommendations as well as the future of the Climate Change Youth Council. And so in our conversation, Minister Kelly recommended that we then identify. Thank you, Deputy Minister. Thank you. Kelly recommended that we identify some priority areas beyond energy to then focus on drawing on the climate change strategy and thinking about priorities for the year ahead. So we were able to connect with her and have those discussions, and we'll then prioritize some further areas to address and create new recommendations. So yeah, that's the first piece that we're working on.
Thank you, Ms.
Just to touch on that as well, I think that our recommendations were very well received by the GNWT. All of the feedback that we received on them was overwhelmingly positive, which we were very grateful for. It's a document that we put a lot of work into and was very collaborative, so almost everybody in the council participated in its creation. And yeah, we're looking forward to, creating more recommendations and seeing how the council can fit into future projects that the GNWT is working on. Specifically right now working on the 2025 to 2029 draft to see kind of where the GNWT can fit into the climate change framework. Where the CCYC can fit into the climate change framework, and how we can benefit the Northwest Territories further. Very much looking forward to, future partnerships and collaborations with other nonprofit organizations to kind of accomplish these goals that the GNWT has set forward. Yeah, I hope that kind of answers the question.
Thank you. Something further, Mr. Morris, please, if you would.
No, I don't want to spend too much time kind of just agreeing with you, but just really appreciated the recommendations. I'm curious on the suggestion of Youth Climate Corps. That strikes me really as something that would be, very likely to be picked up by the philanthropic industry, and I'm just kind of curious. Call it an industry is probably off, but by philanthropy, I'm curious if you have thought further through. I mean, certainly GNWT could do something like that, but knowing that philanthropic organizations tend to sponsor that kind of thing, it seems like a good opportunity to do it without, the GNWT. As you may be aware, it's facing pretty dire fiscal situation right now. So have you thought about how that climate corps could be established perhaps as some kind of NGO or a charity or something where they could receive philanthropic donations, so we could establish something out of it like that, maybe outside of government, and do exactly what you're talking about, establishing those kinds of jobs?
Ms. John Kine, please.
So I've definitely thought about it, and I've definitely considered even the CCYC compiling all of the green jobs and putting them on a website, and kind of making them that information more accessible for young people in the Northwest Territories. It's not something that we necessarily have the capacity for at this moment. I'm really hopeful that there's a lot of different organizations that want to work with us and want to partner with us, and that eventually we can kind of do something of our own to highlight green jobs in the Northwest Territories. The Youth Climate Corps, while I make it kind of sound like a very easy thing to do, is more what I see is just making a list of all of the jobs that are currently available in the GNWT and then investing in furthering those jobs over the years. It's not an immediate plan. It's more of something that I see as like, okay, so we have a waste management advisor position open right now. We have firefighter positions open right now. We have we have jobs open right now that are the GNWT is currently searching for. So put all of those on a very specific green jobs list. And then as the years go on and we're not in this financial deficit that I'm hoping is not going to last forever, we'll see. we can be positive for a little bit. That's the whole point of youth, is really just to be positive, right?
Okay.
I mean, yeah. And be positive and hopeful. It's the energy that we bring to every room, I guess. Anyway, so eventually as the years progress, adding more jobs to that list and it becoming a bigger thing is kind of what I foresee. And a green job or a climate change job, it's not what everybody thinks of. Like, just because you're not mining, that could be a green job. Like, there's a huge broad category that can be jobs that are in climate change, and people don't necessarily see them that way. Like, I mean, when I was growing up, I didn't think of a firefighter as a climate change fighter, but now I do. And I feel like a lot of people do. So, and that's kind of the example that we're giving with the Youth Climate Corps.
Thank you very much. And for the record, many of us are young at heart, maybe. So, and we still have optimism even at our quickly moving age to larger numbers, that is. I now have MLA Morgan for a set of questions, and then Mr. Testart thereafter, and then Mr. McNeely. So please, Ms. Morgan, if you would, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm so happy to hear about everything that you guys have been doing and the work that you've been putting into really thinking about this territory's energy policy. We don't often hear feedback from youth at this kind of level in terms of our policies. This is super helpful. This might put you on the spot a little bit, but I'm hoping that you might be able to speak to, you've talked about in terms of the carbon tax that there needs to be a public campaign to kind of change the story about what carbon tax is and what it's for. Are you able to explain from your perspective what you think the carbon tax is about? Like what your message is that you would want us to know or want the public out there to know about what you think the carbon tax is or what it's for?
Yep. Ms. Junkind, please.
So I've not been a critic of the carbon tax, but I've been reluctant to support the carbon tax in the past, just on a personal level. And I think that the Youth Climate Change Council is very, very supportive of the carbon tax, and that is very good. And I do want to support the carbon tax. I think that the main issue here is that the Northwest Territories implemented the carbon tax a little bit too soon, or that they didn't provide additional resources for young people and for just generally people of the Northwest Territories to adapt to the carbon tax. And it created this really complicated balance of is the carbon tax good? Is it bad? And a lot of people in the Northwest Territories still rely on diesel generation for heating in their homes. They still rely on gas for their cars and transportation. There needs to be some kind of adaptation available to Northerners in order for the carbon tax to be effective. Because the whole purpose of a carbon tax, in our perspective, was to change, and was to change the ways that we live our life. But that's not accessible, and it's not available here. So then we kind of had to figure out, so then we had to kind of figure out, okay, well, we still want a carbon tax. We still want there to be some kind of incentive for people to change their ways and for people to realize that their GHG emissions are having a negative impact on the environment. So we kind of came up with different recommendations, but including keeping the transparency open, because it's not going to go away. We can't forever keep the carbon tax out of our lives. It's a federal mandate. So, okay, so how can we adapt to that? So increasing transparency around where that money goes is just something that we saw could help increase people's knowledge and awareness of where the carbon tax is going. And that's helpful for people. They want to know where their money goes. And they want to know that, you know, the carbon tax is created and is doing its job and is actually preventing climate change from happening, rather than it just going into, you know, a big pool of, and like, well, it's not endless, but, you know, GNWT money, and getting spent on different projects. So I think that we want the carbon tax to be there, but we just want to have the ability to adapt to it first, and to, you know, create change in our communities without it harming people's lives, because people aren't thriving right now. People aren't surviving right now. They're choosing to heat their homes over buying groceries, like, because the gas is so expensive in a lot of different communities, and even in Yellowknife. It's not a good situation to be in. But yeah, so I feel like it's kind of an unbiased question because I do my research on the carbon tax and I know a lot about it, but it's hard to seek out that information. It's hard to find. Yeah, I don't know. It's particularly my interest, but if I try to talk to any other young person or Northerner that their particular interest is not climate change, then they're just going to be like, oh, the carbon tax, bad, essentially. And like, we hate the carbon tax. But that's not what we hate. We hate that we didn't have the chance to catch up with it.
Thank you for that. So, MLA Morgan, please.
Thank you for that. And yeah, I don't think many of us could have said it any better. And yeah, I mean, you definitely were able to think on your feet there, which hopefully it's a key skill of leadership and politics even. So I hope some of the people from the Climate Change Youth Council consider getting involved in leadership and in your communities or in territorial leadership in the future, because yeah, we need people like you guys to be involved in these discussions at every level. My next question is, so your comments or recommendations around funding sources for smaller scale emissions reductions, so homes or organizations, and you noted a gap there. I wonder if you have been speaking with anyone at Arctic Energy Alliance about some of their programs that helps individuals or households or at smaller scale projects for emissions reductions, and if you feel that they fill in some of the gaps or if there's still big things missing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Looking for a volunteer? Oh, Ms. Chupai? Is that closer? I'm getting closer. I'm trying my best. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. We haven't, but that is a fantastic opportunity to be able to do so. And we had the opportunity to present at a panel this spring for the Earth Week here in Yellowknife, and that was an opportunity actually that was identified in terms of connecting with the Arctic Energy Alliance to continue those conversations. So yeah, I appreciate it. It's a great recommendation.
All right, I now recognize Mr. Testart and Mr. McNeely. Mr. Testart.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for being here today. I appreciate hearing directly from you rather than reading a report. It's always nice. I think the Youth Council's long overdue, or sorry, like the Youth Council could have been put in earlier, and it would have been great to have your input on decisions when we started this big climate discussion all the way back when the GNWT signed on to the Pan-Canadian framework for climate action. And that's where we got the carbon tax and all these other things. You mentioned you're looking for new funding opportunities, and also you're going to Norway and you want to fund that. It would be awesome if we could help you get there. So what kind of funding are you looking for? Because maybe we can put in a good word with the Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Mr. Testart. I'm going to get it right eventually. Jahui? Is that closer? I'm getting it worse. Maybe if you could, we'll talk later. I'll go by your first name. It's Julia. Ja.
And thank you for your question. Yes. Thank you for your question. Yes, so for the Arctic Youth Conference, travel funding is not provided, and so we have received suggestions and are currently applying on a CERNAC grant through the Northern Reach program. And this is something that we are currently applying on to be able to support our travels to present at this conference in January.
Did you get funding from anyone else, by the way?
So currently we're funded by ECC, and we work in, sorry? We don't know. We receive honoraria for having meetings, so we receive $250 a day as a regular member, $300 a day as chair for in-person meetings, and $150 per online meeting. And that is the extent of the funding that we know we have, and then funding for one in-person gathering a year. This year's in-person gathering, only 5 of our members attended because it was last week in October. That's a time of year that's really busy for a lot of people, and especially members that we have that are still in university. That's almost impossible to leave in the month of October. We were hoping to have it in August, but ended up just kind of gathering with the climate change gathering that was hosted at the same time. There's been some, like maybe Corey can speak more to this, but there's been some just changes in the climate change unit that have affected our operations a little bit, but we're working on it, and it's becoming more stable as the days go on. And you know, with a change in leadership, me and Julia were just recently elected as co-chair and chair. We're hoping to kind of bring some new energy and new pressure into moving things forward in the council. And yeah, including getting more funding. And there's a few different people that we're in talks with, and we're still kind of trying to organize whether we're a nonprofit, whether we go through the Northwest Territories Association of Communities and work with them for funding opportunities. It's a work in progress right now, but we are seeking more funding opportunities as we go forward, and with the GNWT and without the GNWT, because there's a lot of people in the private sector that are interested and have funding for youth climate goals and youth climate work.
Mr. Testart, further? They have no money.
Yeah, no one has any money. No, thank you very much for that. I think it'll be interesting to see how they've chosen to structure the climate change, the Youth Council, and how we can maybe encourage the minister to provide a bit more support if you are running into these challenges, because we certainly don't want your ability to speak to these issues curtailed at all by, because I'm assuming your budget's not going to break the back of the public finances of the Northwest Territories. So if we can help you out, that would be great. I just want to turn to your comments on carbon tax. I agree this is a complex issue, and it's particularly complex in Northern Canada, where you have fewer options to transition towards, even if carbon tax was funding a just transition, more or less. And recently I spoke to an economist at a conference, and George Hicks from the Nunavut is an MLA there, asked the question, like, what do we do in this case? What's the best policy? And the economist thought and said, well, you need an exemption, right? And that certainly wasn't on the cards when the carbon tax came in for the North. And now as the cost of living continues to rise, it's getting increasingly more challenging to justify any additional cost of living increase. In the Northwest Territories, we've chosen our own model of carbon tax, and one that's primarily designed to, or has a very bespoke model to the interests of industry. And as you pointed out, industry is our biggest polluter. Do you think that model needs to be revised to look at industry's role in generating carbon tax? Because from your comments before, it seemed like you'd like to put more investment into people, whereas the current system puts quite a lot of investment from carbon tax revenues into exemptions for large emitters. So is it time to look at the model, I guess? Thank you.
Need a volunteer? Ms. Junkind?
So thank you for the question, first of all. It's definitely something that we've considered. The Northwest Territories Climate Change Youth Council is primarily concerned at this moment with individual and regional and local goals of climate change action. So kind of focusing more on what people can do and what individuals can do rather than industry. So that's just kind of where we're centered. Because there's not much that we have involved in industry at the moment. So kind of our recommendations and our goals, that's the center that we're in, is focusing on how can we make people's lives better and how can we make people's lives easier. And that's kind of why we haven't really talked about industry a lot, other than recommending and making a pathway that industry emissions be, oh my gosh, what's the word? Sorry. Blanking, I need the thing. Industry be legislated. Sorry, legislated. That's kind of where that pathway is coming from. It's just something that we think should be happening, and putting a focus on industry, which is our largest emitter, is key. And we already understand that the GNWT is doing that, so it's not something that we recommend it, basically, because it's already done. But we do know that that's really important, and we would continue to keep that model of keeping industry as the main polluter accountable for their emissions. But it's a complicated issue. It is a complicated issue. But that's kind of, the main focus of us is to center the people that live here.
Thank you very much. And you guys are doing great, by the way. So we'll go to Mr. McNeely as our last set of questions, unless anyone else has questions who hasn't asked, because we have to recognize the time, as well as in the context of we have committee business and other committees to follow us moving forward. So we'll make the time if anyone else needs to chime in. That said, Mr. McNeely, if you want to sort of help bring us home on this particular discussion today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I want to thank you for your excellent presentation, your initiatives. It's very good, and although we say climate change, but climate change is here, and I like you using the words of adaptation. How do we adapt to what's already here? So I see you've got some initiatives underway in that area, and I guess being an advocate, I was going to suggest, or I will suggest, if you pick one community and how to transition that community to producing lower carbon, it could be a number of ways. And you've identified, you identified the stop our reliance on diesel generators. Okay, that's a good statement. Now, for the term of your organization, you're going to be living with climate change a lot more than I will be. So let's pick Delaney, for example. There's been a lot of talk going back for decades on eliminating that diesel generator producing electricity in the community, which the community has grown, and now to the point has grown around this noisy generator. And there's been a number of studies and a number of investments to look at the feasibility of transitioning off of that diesel generator. They did some, the government have contributed feasibility money there to look at a run-of-the-river hydro. Now, if we can turn that into reality, that would be evidence that we are selecting one community for adaptation. And how many others are going to follow? When I do my regional tours, one of the communities in Cove Lake has power panels. And there's times in the summer when you can't hear anything because that generator is shut down and they're drawing power from the batteries to produce power electricity to the homes. So it is happening, and we are, and the minister just stated here weeks ago that, you know, we are the victims of climate change. Our climate is growing 4 times faster. So really being the victims of this global emissions, wouldn't all the stakeholders take that seriously to reinvest the revenues generated through carbon? And I totally agree with my colleague, Mr. Testart, on that. If you're reinvesting tax revenues back to the taxpayer, I don't mind paying it because I'm seeing benefits for my community and for my home. So I would encourage your organization to maybe pursue that and select a pilot project that is actually achievable. And I think that might be a good, as mentioned, a good result, and this is what we're seeing in terms of benefits. So I really support your endeavors, including solicitation of additional funds to keep the campaign going. Great job, keep it up. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Seeing more of a comment, unless you folks wanted to reply, or maybe what I can do is give you a chance at the very, very end. Okay, so is anyone like to ask a question who hasn't had one? I'd like to recognize Mr. Narasu, please. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. It's very informative. You know, I see some of your. You said you stated that you'd like members from each community. Is there a problem recruiting, or? I'm just you know, I think one of the goals maybe you can set is attending. You know, the indigenous governments, they have assemblies each summer, and they enjoy, or they thrive on youth presenting to them. They seem to adapt more to the youth than to any other demographic group. And using traditional knowledge in some of your initiatives would be really good, because you look in here, you're looking at some of your initiatives that you're looking at is fire smarting and, you know, retrofit building. All these, some of these jobs or initiatives are going on within my community of Fort McPherson right now. So it'd be good to, you know, if you can tag on to that, and I'm sure the organization within my community would be happy to help with your initiatives. Just what kind of challenges are you experiencing trying to recruit members from other? I see in North Slave you have one, and in the Beaufort Delta you have one. Is there a reason there's lack of interest in this organization? Because I feel you guys are doing a real good job, and you know, you're opening the eyes of government and the communities of the north. So, just like to thank you on that part. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you for that. Ms. Junkind, if you could.
So just to touch on that a little bit, we have a 2-year term that started in March 2023. And 2 years is a long time in a young person's life. A lot of things change. A lot of, goals and priorities change, your job changes, your university like your school changes, anything like that. So we've missed a few people and lost a few people in the past year and a half, simply because of life changes. And then I'd also just like to touch a little bit on recruitment. So we don't have currently a recruitment process that fills a spot when someone else leaves. The next time that we do recruitment in March of 2025, and this is something that we still need to talk about with the climate change unit, but that we've talked about with Tasha a little bit, is that we'll have a pool of candidates selected, and people, if they drop or if they leave, we'll have people to contact to replace them this time around, because we're a new organization. We're still learning on all of those fronts, assuming that in 2 years people's lives don't change very much is a bit of an oversight. So we're working on a solution for that, for sure. But there was definitely, like when we started 2 years ago, we had a full council. Yeah. So that's kind of where we're at right now. But the next campaign to recruit new members is in March 2025. I encourage all of you to share it with your communities and to share it across the Northwest Territories on all of your channels, because we want to find those young people that care about climate change. I feel like I wasn't very hard to find because I've been bugging the climate change unit since I was 17, and including them taking me to COP when I was 19. So at least I made myself visible, but not everybody has that visibility, and we're really looking for them.
Okay, anything further from the member? Okay, seems to be good. So folks, we're wrapping up. It's 11:30. We should probably bring it to a close, only because committee has further business. I'd like to offer you both an opportunity if you wanted to do a quick wrap up, and then I'll provide some final comments as we wish you well. So please, maybe just raise your hand who would like to speak. Okay, Rick, please, if you would.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for this opportunity to introduce ourselves and to share a little bit about what we've been working on and our priorities moving forward. And to Regan's point, we are recruiting new members come the spring. So I will use this opportunity again to reiterate that we are excited to recruit new members, and please spread the word among your communities and regions. And yeah, once again, thank you for this opportunity. I'll pass the mic to Regan.
Please.
Sorry. Thank you very much again. I would like to finish off by saying that this set of recommendations is very important to us. And if you have any questions about it, feel free to reach out to us. And feel free to reach out to the committee at any time for any future, advising, consultation, planning, anything like that. We are here to support the GNWT and criticize it. It's similar, I think, for a lot of you that aren't ministers and members. You're supportive but critical. And so we're here to do that for you, and specifically when it comes to youth climate change issues. And our committee is vast and very knowledgeable. We all have very different interests in climate change, and represent, everybody in the Northwest Territories in these spots. So yeah, we all have information, and we're more than happy to share it at any time.
Thank you very much. First of all, I appreciate everything you've done so far. I want to stress that without a doubt, I really believe your contribution is valued and meaningful, and it certainly isn't going unnoticed, at least from our point of view. And I can't make any promises on behalf of committee, but I mean, I have every belief we're going to have more than one or two conversations moving forward on this particular initiative that you're bringing forward, the engagement of our youth folks. I know just on the side here, I asked, do we have a budget line item in the government for you folks? And it doesn't appear our main estimates do. So it's my thought being is in, with unconfirmed obviously, but my thought being is this is being supported and funded on the side of the table of other types of initiatives or buried within them. And we need a further conversation on that. Again, no promises, but I have no doubt we're going to talk about it in the future. I can't stress enough, you both did a great job today, so feel every bit. You both did a great job today, and I think you should be both proud of how you've communicated and how you've presented, and so with great confidence and enthusiasm. You may be young, as you keep saying, but we might be less young, but we still have the energy and enthusiasm to help you folks carry on. If you want to let us know how we can communicate with you further, that would be great, and how we can help promote that as well. So, that said, I'll call the discussion to a close, and thank you again, everyone, for your time, and of course, our millions of subscribers were probably excited to hear your messaging. Thank you.